Hello and welcome to India Young Generation Next. I'm Shereen, Bhan, and we're in conversation with Tarun and Nikhil. Sawhney. Many thanks for joining us on the show. Tarun, let me start by asking you, you sort of got initiated into the company in about 1996 and you were made an executive director only in 2008. So your father waited a long while before he actually decided to elevate you, didn't he?
Over the last decade and a half, have of course worked here. Straight out of university, I got into the business. I lived at one of our sugar factories for a couple of years. Post that, of course, I went and worked as a management consultant in the UK. And
yeah, with Sawhney.
That's right, and then went to business school at Wharton. And so I only got back to India in 2002. And you know, we've had a very interesting relationship as a family, where you know it's one of great trust, of great candor, etc. And it's about working from the bottom up. So you know, we've both worked at the very grassroots levels and then worked our way up in the businesses. So the time that was spent in becoming an executive director was required in getting to know the business, getting to know the people that have made the business what it is today.
It was always predetermined or pre-decided that you would come back at some point after you had finished your stint with, for you, for instance, with Nestle and bearings and so on and so forth, that you would always come back and be involved with the family business.
We individually decided where our time and opportunity would be best spent in terms of being able to realize true value creation.
You know, let me ask you about the sugar business, and that really is perhaps one of the most regulated sectors in India. It's as much about politics as it is about business. Were you apprehensive when you actually started off that what am I going to get into? Is this really something that I would want to continue to do for the rest of my life, perhaps?
At that point in time, I wanted to get to know our family business, and this was the best way to do it. Now, sugar at that time, the only way to really get to know the business was to live in the factories, to appreciate the dynamics of the industry from that very basic level. And that is really...
And what was the big lesson learned? Did you really get to appreciate the dynamics sitting in a mill in Uttar Pradesh?
You know, you really do, because you appreciate the largest stakeholder in the sugar industry is the farmer. We at Triveni today deal with approximately 250,000 farmer families. So that's about 1 million people altogether. The relationship, which is a daily relationship for at least 6 months of the year, is an important one. It is tenuous at times over the last few years where interests may have differed from time to time, but it's a relationship that has stemmed multiple generations. And so you have to start from that very basic piece of knowledge of how do you work with the farmer, how do you appreciate what the farmer needs, requires, and what type of relationship he would like to have with you.
But how do you deal with the politics? And that is a large part of this business, isn't it? When you have non-bailable warrants out against half of the sugar business in the state, how do you deal with something like that?
The business is fundamentally very sound. If you look at it from the principles, you have a rising per capita income, and therefore you have increased demand for sugar progressively for the next several decades, we would imagine. It's one of the largest employers of skilled manpower in rural areas, so it has a social element of social sustainability, and ecologically it's a fantastic product. So, having looked at it from that perspective, it has a great future as an industry. It's a long cycle product as well, though. So given the fact that sugar as an industry was only delicensed in 1999 and continues to be regulated both at the state and central level, you have to actually have conviction in the fundamentals.
We've seen a very, very good year as far as sugar is concerned, but analysts now seem to be worried about where realizations are going to be headed, whether this is really the start of a down cycle. What is your own assessment in terms of cost of production, realizations and demand?
Yes, sugar is cyclical. Everybody knows that. Are we heading towards, have we seen the peak? We probably have. We've seen sugar prices decline from 40 plus rupees, ex-mill price, to just below 30 rupees right now. So it's a significant decline over a few months. Does that translate to you know, the bottoming out of the, or rather the decline in the cycle? Yes, it probably does. We're going to see a scenario where there's massive production next year. And frankly speaking, that does not equate necessarily to loss. it could be certainly a profitable year. A lot of that depends now on government policy.
But, policymakers in our country are slow to react and respond to situations and slow to react to industry's demand. So given where things currently are, should we be looking at under 30 prices where they currently are? Will that be what we're going to see over the next few quarters?
It's very difficult to, I don't have a crystal ball. I would say that as far as policymakers are concerned, the Ministry of Food, our Honourable Minister, etc., they have been very quick to react. Over the last 18 months, they have been extremely good.
That's only because they were on the upside. That's only because sugar prices were at 55 rupees.
In managing expectations. And fact of the matter is that there are larger issues at bay. You have food price inflation. You have a whole host of other political encumbrances at this time. So I do appreciate that fact. Bearing that in mind, the mood and the signals that we're getting as part of the industry are positive.
Okay.
So we look forward to a large number of changes at this time.
Okay, so you're confident.
No, but below 30 rupee pricing doesn't necessarily mean that it's a loss, because the current stock level will actually finish before the next sugar season starts.
Okay.
And the cost of production for sugar, which will be sold in the following season, will actually be significantly different from this season.
When you say significantly different, how much lower are you expecting it to be?
We would imagine it would be lower by at least 20% to 25%.
20%. What are your aspirations for the sugar business? You are currently the third largest manufacturer. I understand that you have expressed your interest in picking up some of those disinvestment candidates that are being now opened up by the UP government, 11 operational mills. Where do things currently stand? I understand there's a pre-bid meeting on the 30th of April.
That's right, that's right. And we're happy looking at opportunities across India. We're an Indian player. It's too early to comment on where we would look at, but since you've asked that question, there are some very important issues to talk about. Yes, you can always look at top line growth, but you have to look at the bottom line. You have to also look at your stakeholders. And we are focusing a lot of resources and a significant part of our efforts in ensuring that our stakeholders are the real beneficiaries going forward.
Our initiative is to actually be aligned with the farmers so that we are able to be policy agnostic. And to take that forward.
Is that really possible to be policy agnostic in this country?
Actually, no, it isn't. But we try to be as much as possible. So there's an endeavor that we've started with the World Wildlife Fund and Exec to improve agricultural productivity in our sugarcane farms. And we've already covered about 5,000 acres, and our plan is in a couple of years to take that up to about 100,000 acres, where we would essentially lower seed utilization by about 85%, water consumption by about 40 to 60%, and therefore pesticide and fertilizer consumption as well, thereby changing the cost of production for a farmer, but at the same time improving his yield.
Sure.
Having done that, what you essentially aim to do is change the farmer's mentality of looking at his remuneration from a per stick or per unit basis to actually what his remuneration or profit should be per hectare or per acre of land, per unit of land. And by doing that, you are actually aligning yourself for a much longer term, sustainable, globally competitive scenario.
So if I were to read between the lines of what you've just told me, would I be correct in saying that capacity addition is not really a big priority as far as you're concerned at this point in time? And also in terms of diversifying geographically out of Uttar Pradesh to other parts of the country, is that a priority for you? We've seen a lot of talk about consolidation within the sugar business in India, especially amongst the bigger players.
Right.
How real is that?
It's something that has to happen. If you look at the cement industry over the last 2 decades, the cement industry went through the same thing. You had hundreds of small manufacturers, and over a period of 10 years, there was massive consolidation in that industry. Sugar will face exactly the same type of dynamics going forward. As far as we're concerned, at the moment, we're very happy looking seriously at growth opportunities, provided
Domestically?
Provided they fit in with our long-term vision. That is the most.
Domestically or internationally as well?
Well, we're only business, but in sugar it would most definitely be domestic.
That's right. In sugar it would be domestic.
Can we expect something on real consolidation, perhaps an announcement in this financial year? You closing up an acquisition perhaps in this financial year on the sugar side?
I don't think so.
Unfortunately, this sugar consolidation won't be a news story for news networks because it's a much longer term cycle.
Right.
It will depend partly on a government policy on closing down bad assets or underutilized assets, but But we think that that will happen over time, and it would probably be, the opportunity would be taken by those who are well capitalized and who actually have a coherent strategy.
Give me a sense of what we can expect in the next few quarters in terms of realizations.
My personal view is that we will see prices fluctuate in a 15% band from where they are today.
Okay.
Depending on month-to-month consumption, peak consumption months which are coming in front of us, I think we'll certainly see some small increases, very much in line with what the stakeholders in the industry expect.